Somewhere in the world right now, a dog is carrying something ancient. Not a virus or a parasite, but living cancer cells from a dog that died thousands of years ago. This is the story of the immortal dog. The disease is called canine transmissible venereal tumor, or CTVT, and unlike almost every cancer ever discovered, this one doesn't just grow inside a body, it spreads between animals, not like a virus that infects your cells, but as living cancer cells themselves. That means when it spreads, the tumor cells don't come from a new dog, they come from the original. Every case of this cancer today is genetically linked to a single dog that lived thousands of years ago. Scientists believe this dog lived around 4,000 to 8,000 years ago. It wasn't a pet like we think of today. More likely, it was something closer to a village dog, living alongside humans but not fully owned by them. Genetic analysis shows that it may have resembled modern pariah dogs, or even something like a primitive husky-type animal. At some point, this dog developed a tumor, but something impossible happened. Instead of dying with its host, its cancer cells adapted. They learned how to survive outside the original body and invade another. To understand how this cancer spread across the entire world, we need to go back even further, to the origin of the human-dog bond. Dogs were the first animals ever domesticated, likely from wolves over 15,000 years ago. As humans migrated, dogs followed. They guarded camps, helped hunt, and scavenged scraps. And most importantly, they lived in close contact with other dogs. Uncontrolled breeding, frequent interaction, and global human movement created the perfect conditions for something like CTVT to spread. CTVT spreads primarily during mating, but here's the disturbing part. The cancer itself acts almost like a biological parasite. When two dogs come into contact, living tumor cells transfer from one to another. Those cells then attach and begin growing in the new host. It's not an infection in the normal sense, it's more like a tissue transplant without permission. Over thousands of years, this cancer spread across the globe. Wherever dogs went, it followed. Today, CTVT is found on every continent except Antarctica. It's most common in areas with large populations of stray dogs, parts of South America, Africa, and Asia. In a way, this cancer succeeded where most organisms fail. It became globally distributed without ever needing a traditional host species cycle. Here's where things get even stranger. Scientists have sequenced the DNA of CTVT tumors and discovered something incredible. The cancer cells in dogs today are not new. They are direct descendants of that original tumor. That means the original dog cells are still alive, still dividing and still spreading, after thousands of years. In biological terms, this makes CTVT one of the oldest continuously living cell lineages on Earth, older than most civilizations, and probably older than entire languages. Despite how terrifying it sounds, CTVT is usually not deadly. In many cases, dogs can recover naturally, or with simple veterinary treatment like chemotherapy. The tumor grows for a while, but then often regresses, almost as if the dog's immune system eventually figures it out. Still, it's a reminder of something unsettling, that cancer under the right conditions can evolve into something far more dangerous. What's interesting about this dog is that scientists have actually reconstructed what this original dog may have looked like. Not a golden retriever, not a bulldog, something far more ancient. A medium-sized, short-haired dog, genetically closest to what we now call primitive or pariah dogs. These are kinds of dogs that live alongside humans, but aren't fully domesticated. They survive on scraps, they roam freely, and they interact with many other dogs, which, as you'll see, was the perfect environment for something like this to begin. At some point in its life, this dog developed a tumor, but this tumor wasn't normal. Somehow it gained the ability to survive outside its original host, and once it did that, it stopped just being a disease. It became something else entirely. To reiterate, at this point, CTVT crossed the line that almost no cancer ever crosses. It became a parasitic organism, because that's really what it is. It's no longer dependent on the body, it jumps from host to host. It survives by using dogs as a temporary environment, not a permanent home. And just like parasites, it evolved ways to avoid being destroyed. Normally, your immune system would instantly recognize foreign cells and kill them, but CTVT found a workaround. It can actually hide from the immune system at least long enough to establish itself. It's not just cancer anymore, it's something closer to a clonal organism, a living line of cells, that has been reproducing itself for thousands of years. We've already established that this cancer lives in every continent except Antarctica today, but to understand how this cancer spread across the entire world, we have to talk about something bigger: the relationship between humans and dogs. Dogs were the first animals ever domesticated. Long before farming, long before cities, humans and wolves formed a partnership. The friendlier wolves stayed near human camps, feeding on scraps, and over generations those wolves became dogs. And as humans spread across the planet, dogs went with them, from Asia to Europe to the Americas. Dogs effectively became the most widespread land mammal after humans, and wherever dogs went, they interacted. They bred, they fought, and they lived in close contact, which created the perfect conditions for CTVT to spread silently across the globe. It's also important to note that there are different dog species on different continents. Yes, specific breeds of dogs from across the world came across with humans, but different dog breeds that were native and indigenous to certain areas, like the Americas, also came in contact with these older dog species, and also contracted this virus that spread amongst their camps. While it's primarily spread during mating, it's not just limited to that. It can also spread through close contact, like licking, biting, or sniffing affected areas. Here's what makes it so strange. The tumor cells themselves physically transfer. Not DNA, not particles, actual living cells. Once inside a new dog, they attach to tissue and begin growing again. It's like planting a seed, except the seed is alive, and the result is a tumor that is genetically identical to one that existed thousands of years ago. Scientists have sequenced the DNA of these tumors, and what they found is incredible. Every sample from every part of the world matches the same original lineage. That means every case of CTVT today is a continuation of that first tumor. It's not similar, it's not related, it's the same, which means those original cells are still alive, which also means that original dog's DNA are still alive, effectively making it an immortal dog. With the tumor acting essentially as a parasite, it probably sounds like something that should have wiped out dogs. You're not wrong for thinking that, but evolution has found a balance. CTVT usually doesn't kill its host. In fact, many dogs end up recovering, because if it killed too quickly, it wouldn't spread. So over time, it evolved to survive without destroying its own chances of transmission. Thousands of years ago, one dog got sick, but its disease didn't die with it. It adapted, it spread, and it endured. And even now, in dogs walking the streets today, a part of an ancient animal is still alive. Not as memory, not as a fossil, but as living cells that refused to die. There is one question that makes this story even more unsettling. If cancer can jump between dogs, could it spread to other species, like wolves, coyotes, and foxes? After all, they are a part of the same family, canids. Genetically, dogs are incredibly close to other canids. Dogs and wolves, for example, are so similar that they can interbreed and produce fertile offspring, which technically makes dogs a subspecies of wolves and not its own species. That means that their cells, their biology, and even parts of their immune systems are closely related. So in theory, there's nothing physically stopping these cancer cells from attempting to infect other canid species. In reality, though, it's extremely rare, and there are a few big reasons why. First, wild canids don't interact with domestic dogs that often, especially not in the close contact ways required for transmission. Second, their immune systems are just different enough to recognize these cancer cells as foreign and destroy them, so even if exposure happens, the tumor usually doesn't take hold. Nevertheless, there have been very rare reports of similar tumors in other canids, like foxes and coyotes, but they are extremely uncommon, and scientists are still studying whether those cases are true cross-species transmissions or separate similar diseases, which would make this even scarier. What we do know is this: CTVT has been astonishingly successful in dogs, but it hasn't managed to fully jump ship into other species, at least not yet. And that raises an even bigger question. If this cancer was able to evolve once from a normal tumor in a transmissible organism, what's stopping something like this from evolving again in another species, or becoming even more adaptable? Because what makes CTVT so fascinating is also what makes it a little terrifying. It proves that under the right conditions, cancer itself can become contagious. For now, this ancient disease remains locked within dogs, but its existence proves something unsettling, that the line between disease and organism is thinner than we ever imagined. This disease is fascinating, and while there have been similar types of contagious cancers found in Tasmanian devils, the good news is that humans don't have to worry about this disease anytime soon. And with that, I leave this video on a high note. If you enjoyed hearing about this from me today and want to see more long-form content on my channel, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and let me know what you would like to see next.